Hello, everyone. Welcome to Extra Hours. It's good to be back. We had a week off. We had a rest, and now we're back, and we're excited. There's a couple of things that have happened that we're doing slightly different to push what we're doing here, and to tell us a little bit more about it as well. Because Guy, I think you were first playing around with this just recently. So tell us, what are we doing slightly different in this setup?
Well, over the weekend, we were trying to figure out. Sorry, hold on just a second. I'm getting a double in my ears.
We're all hearing double. I'm not sure if it's...
You're all hearing double. Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm not hearing double.
Except for Grant. Which means I wonder if Grant...
Usually that means
sure you, Grant.
Haven't got the test stream going? That was that's always the trick at the start.
No, this isn't a test stream because it's like 200 milliseconds behind.
Okay.
Can you talk, Chris?
Chris is muted.
I can talk. I can speak.
And then
I hear myself. I lay slap back as well.
Can you talk? Guy.
Okay, I'm talking. And
okay, and then Grant. Oh, Adrian, you talk.
Yep, coming in from the back end of the world. One or two coming through.
Okay, and then you talk, Grant.
I'll talk now. Oh,
so usually when the person who doesn't double,
exactly, I'm the problem.
It's them.
That's awesome. And, do you know, I was sitting there thinking, now hang on, that can't be possible because all I'm listening to is Zoom. How is everyone having such a problem? And I'll explain it while I'm fixing it. And that was that I've been mixing an album. I've been mixing an album for the a cappella band, and what was pretty amazing is I was talking about that actually a couple of weeks ago. Was it 3 weeks ago, when I was on the cruise, and we were mixing the album there. Now what happened is I came home from the cruise, and then we needed to continue to mix it, and the best way to do that was for me to leave it all set up on my Mac Studio here, and then remote into it. And so the best way to do all of that was then to have my X32 feeding the audio back into Zoom through this channel, so that I wasn't sharing audio through Zoom. I was using the original audio through Zoom. And so there it is there. I found it. So let's just have a little test there, Alex. See if you can
Now I'm talking. Nope. Still hearing myself.
It's not.
This is great for people to listen to, though. I mean,
all right. So
it's a great illustration.
Let me further explain. There it is now. Further explaining.
Checking now. It's fixed.
Because
I know you won't know.
I know.
It's fixed for you the whole
I'll repeat
time.
your words.
Would it be possible to get the doubling at least on my voice though? That would be cool.
Yeah,
I would like.
Let's do that. So this is the thing. The X32, a remarkable device, and of course you buy the wing now. But X32 rack with 16 outputs. One output is what is being sent through to Zoom, and one output is what's being sent to my ears. And so I just turned off everyone that was coming to my ears. So when Alex spoke, I couldn't hear anything, but he could hear himself back through my... So anyway, we've resolved all of that. I can now hear, and now we'll explain that I'm also sending... Well, Guy, I'll let you share what was...
Yeah, let me try this again without the doubling in my head that makes me feel like I'm drunk or something. I was just like, wow, I haven't had anything to drink in 10 years.
You're in a stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the last episode, we had some green NDI hits. So Taylor and I hadn't seen this in a while. So we decided to go and spend some time. I duplicated the environment in my AWS VPC just to see if we could duplicate it, because we want to get to the bottom of whatever's going on. Well, while we were doing that, and I had my infrastructure set up, Taylor went ahead and shut down. We couldn't reproduce it. We tried for hours to try, and we brought in these 8 bots that we have in place of all of us and just let it run. But we couldn't reproduce it. So as we shut down Taylor's environment, I fired up my NDI bridge just to see what it would look like to feed up a higher fidelity color. I was just going to do 1080p, but when I looked at it, my camera is native 2160, so it's 4K. And so I was like, well, let me just pull it into Vector, make the session a 4K session instead of a 1080 session. So I tried that. And when I pulled the return feedback down from Vector in through Bridge to my studio monitor locally, I was like, wow. I mean, sure, it had a big Vector logo over the top of it because I'm just using the free version that anybody can use. And I was just shocked at how crisp it was. That's why I'm wearing this shirt, to see if you can get a little more resolution than you're used to seeing with the detail in something like this. Yeah, are you getting more?
Well, we are
That's
in Zoom.
Amore. That's
in Zoom, I guess.
But how's it look? Come on, people in chat, tell us how it looks in 4K on your big screen TV on YouTube. Do you notice any difference between 4K coming through NDI Bridge and 4K coming through Zoom? So what you're seeing is we're actually doubling. We're sending Zoom for the conversation, but so that's about 5 megabit. But then we also have NDI Bridge running, and what that bridge does is locally you're a joiner, and then in the cloud we have a host, and we're just joining the NDI networks together. So anything that's on my network is now up in the cloud, so you can pull any of my feeds into Vector that are locally here. In fact, Taylor was having fun over the weekend because there's 3 PTZ Optics cameras here, and he started importing all the 3 PTZ Optics, and he could control them from the input in Vector. You could actually zoom in, zoom out, autofocus, exposure, all from within Vector. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. He's control, and it was real time. Like, I mean, he's making moves. And I asked him, how does it feel? He said, it's totally smooth. It's like local. I was like, wow, that's crazy. It's crazy to have.
It is very cool. So we're going to talk about this for another couple of minutes. Otherwise, we'll lose Fenwick. We have to hear his perspective on this because he's been used to black and white TV for most of his life, and so the idea of going to 4K is a bit disturbing.
You whippersnappers, get off my lawn!
I actually had to yell that a couple of weekends ago. Get off my lawn. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've arrived.
You've arrived.
You've arrived. So let me just quickly explain as well that I also am sending in 4K. And so I was surprised that I was able to do this, in that I don't have a 4K capture device. And that's the only way I was thinking how am I going to do that? I need to get it into the computer and then be able to send it across. But actually, a little Zoe box that is the HDMI to NDI encoder / decoder little box is very cool. It's worth getting that. Guy, I used it just recently where I was like, I just needed another backup streaming, like just RTMP streaming device. Worked perfectly. You know, it was like plug that in, got live stream going on it. I wasn't using NDI at all, but away it went as a live streaming little box, you know.
It's impressive tech for the money. I mean, it does RTMP plus SRT. I haven't tried the enhanced RTMP, which that's something new for YouTube, where I think you might be able to squeeze out even more color fidelity into YouTube with eRTMP. So there was a webinar a while back that they talked a lot about it. I'll have to go dig that back up, but that's the future for them to be able to get it to H.265, because right now you can't feed H.265 into YouTube natively. So
one of the challenges probably, and people will be noticing this now on my camera, is that I'm on a Canon M50 camera, and it's in 4K, so it's going out 2160 25p. It just happens to be set in PAL because I'm in Australia, and I figured why not save 5 frames a second. Well, I was like, let's let it work a little less hard. So what's happening is that the crop is different and the focus has changed, and it doesn't seem to be as fast in focusing, and so I'm watching that a little bit. But the point is that it goes from the camera, goes into that Zoe box, and that converts it to NDI HX, and then I've got another little NUC computer that's just sitting doing the NDI bridge that connects it to the cloud, and that's how that path works. It then loops out of the Zoe box and goes into the ATEM Mini Extreme, which can, I'm sure I heard this before, but I didn't realize that it can take a 4K input into the ATEM Mini Extreme. but it just that it's, downscales it, right? And so, but that's handy though, because I can loop out straight in, take the 4K stream into the A10 Mini, still have my normal workflow into Zoom, and now we're set. Now the interesting thing was too that because I'm in Australia, the normal Zoom route is probably a couple of 100 milliseconds, something like that. The NDI bridge is actually just happens to be very similar to that as the Zoom. We didn't need to delay my video in vector at all. The NDI, that whole workflow, and probably the Zoe box too, Guy, don't you think, is probably adding a couple of frames as well?
Adds like 18 milliseconds, I think, is what that does across your local network, just the conversion. Yeah. So not much.
Yeah. So there's a little bit there too. And by the time it gets to vector, it actually is about the same as Zoom, which makes it very easy because the audio is coming through Zoom and the video is just being switched from the NDI feed, which should look pretty good. So anyway, that's what we're doing different. So we had a week off and then we came back in with 2 4K
stronger
cameras.
Than ever.
That's right. Exactly. So the point is too that we are here to answer some questions and have a bit of a chat. Chris, seriously, you do make a good point about no one's watching YouTube and saying watching a very good looking 1080p stream and then saying I wish this was in 4K.
Yeah. I'm not saying nobody is. Alex is here. He might do that.
Some of us.
Well, I mean, it's an old adage.
One thing we ran into, just that one thing that is the case that is quantifiable, is that if you stream any higher than 1080p, like literally 1080p, 1081, YouTube puts you in a different box as far as the compression goes, and everything looks better. That's what we noticed in the 1080p stream. So one of the things that we're doing is by streaming, we didn't have to do UHD, but if we did 1440 or whatever, anything higher than 1080p goes into a different compression box than the 1080p. So the reason that we're going to UHD, I mean, because it's the easiest way up, rather than doing some kind of weird fractional scale up, UHD is the next step up from 1080p, and the 1080p actually looks better because YouTube treats the content differently than a regular 1080p stream. And the reason we paid so much attention to it is I kept on looking on Monday nights when we were doing this test and going, why does extra hours look so much better than office hours? And I was, I had an A/B reference. I'm there in the morning, and I'm in there in the evening, and I'm in the same system, and I'm looking at 2 windows next to each other, and one looks way better than the other one. So I was like, oh, okay, well, there's something else going on here. So that's why. So
it's probably the hosting, though. Really, I think it's probably the hosting.
Well, the hosting does make it sharper. I mean, you are a better host, and so there's a sharp. I think that the hosting oftentimes does affect the resolution of the compression. Because they're just because it's more important content because it's a better hosting situation. So
there you go.
But even with that increase from the hosting resolution, there appears to be a superior compression that we're getting from delivering 4K to it. So that's why that's what became like, oh, we got to do this, and I do agree that many people, aren't going to notice it, but the goal is really not to show it to everyone, but there are people who will notice it, and those people are the people who oftentimes are making some technical decisions about, what they should be doing in the future as it relates to events and streams.
And just because I have it up here, we might as well take a look at it and see what this res chart looks like. So later, for reference, you guys can pull this down on the rewatch and just see what all these colors and all these look like compared to 1080, and switch it back and forth and just see what some moving.
But again, it's not the 1080. It's what we really the apples to apples would be for us to stream a 1080p version of this. Like we could, the apples to apples here would be to have another vector instance that is a 1080p event, to make this really complicated, have it streaming to a 1080p, taking a 1080p vector and having it stream 1080p to YouTube, and having a 1080p here doing it, and then look at both of those apples to apples. But
I think it is that enhanced RTMP stream. I think that's what's going on. Is they might be sending it through that new pipeline. We should ask the folks that are in the know behind the scene. There's been some.
I've had some conversations.
Yeah.
So the
we should confirm. Confirm or deny. It's confirm.
I may not be making everything up. so anyway,
whereas on the other hand, I'm usually making stuff up.
I mean, so sometimes I'm guessing. I'm probably not guessing on this one. So it also, if you have the ability to do HLS or SRT, some accounts like ours can do SRT to YouTube. That may also improve it. So one of the other things we should test is like doing a UHD 1080p versus an SRT 1080p. There's lots of tests that are available there's a lot of tests if we have the time to play with. So we'll play with those. But we did notice that, and we are planning to, one of the things we did is we stopped doing second hours for now because I just really wanted to have the freedom to evolve quickly. And one of the things that we saw, for instance, was we learned this. We were losing frames. We're losing chunks of the show for a couple of weeks. And so we talked to some people who knew things, and we did some more testing and everything else. And it turns out that if you're streaming 4K, it's very important to stream 420, not 422. And that's what jams up the transcoding. So specifically for YouTube. So that was what we learned. Now it's running smoothly for both this show as well as for our morning. We're now doing 4K in the hardware as well. So the morning show is all 4K. We hope to test. We'll confirm it tomorrow in a developer meeting. But we hope to start testing the HDR for the morning show on Saturday. And if it doesn't look horrible, you'll start to see it. It may not look perfect for a couple of weeks. But the reason we turned off the second hours is so that we can nug through it. like let's learn quickly. The advantage of doing a show every day is that we can nug through it and figure it out. And within a week or two, it'll look great. And then the next step that we're looking at is increasing the frame rate and going to 5.1. And the goal is to do all that by the end of the year in the hardware, and then we'll look at it in the cloud.
Do you know, I want to come back to Chris too, but the what you were saying there, the very simple thing about, seemingly simple, 422 to 420, streaming to YouTube.
Undocumented, it's not anywhere.
Well, this is the point, right? I'm like, thank you again for creating office hours, for us pushing all of these things, playing around with it every day, because one or many of us in the office hours community is going to have a need, or there's going to be a client that says, for some reason or another, they need to live stream to YouTube in 4K, and they're going to want you to do it, and you're going to go ahead and do it. And the pipeline may be in 422, and you have a whole bunch of frames, that are missing, and they're going to be jumping up and down saying, what's going on? We're losing chunks, right? You're not going to know where to look.
There was nowhere to look, to figure that out, unless you knew who to talk to and how to make it work. And I think that by pushing that outer envelope, we're finding lots of sharp edges. I think that there's many places where we're finding the outer edges and sanding those off before everyone else gets there to do that. And I think that that's one of the important things. One of the important things for us to do these out, and watching Zoom in 4K probably isn't as important, but the next step after that is that I have a camera system that's hidden over here. Maybe I'll bring it up, that I'm doing testing with, where we're using a Teradek Rangers that are 4K 60, and we're using prisms, which are 4K 60, so that we can deliver an HDR 4K 60 5.1 to Michigan from the camera to do that live thing that we did in NAB, but at that level. Now, the fact that the pipeline all works, the pipeline doesn't think about it. It can just do the thing, and we don't think about when that becomes normal, where 4K 60 HDR 5.1 is what we do every day. Adding that camera to the system and having it suddenly look amazing and sound amazing is not hard for us. It took a lot of skin off to do it the first time. Lots of people lost lots of sleep to do it for NAB. So the idea is to turn this into we don't think about it. We can incorporate it anytime we want. And now we turn that on for event coverage or whatever we want. And it will be the highest quality event coverage ever, which is, we're kind of getting to that point where we can do that in a lot of places.
Yeah. All right, Chris, one of the things that you have said, your observations before, in the future, you've known Alex for many, many years. One of the things that we talk about is looking at what's coming next. And you had an analogy about looking over the fence. Most of us are looking over the fence of what's coming next. How many fences do you think Alex is looking over?
Well, I've said this for a long time, and I would also say, Grant, I don't think most people even know that there are fences. I think the vast majority of people are totally fine just plopping down in front of their TV and hitting the button on the power button on their Comcast remote and just watching TV. Most people still absorb content in that way. In this community of people, we think that that's weird, but in actuality, we're the weird ones. We've normalized weird to the point where we think the normal is weird. Okay. So, I think that, I've been doing this for 4 decades now, and I've always kind of prided myself in trying to, look over the fence, as you said. And when we started doing office hours, I've said this, I've told Alex this many times, when I look over the fence, I see a beautiful green lawn, and on the other side of that lawn is another fence, and I'm looking at Alex's backside because he's looking over the next fence, and so it's been amazing. And we all teased him, or I've teased him about his road to 1080p. Like, who puts 1080p on YouTube? Or actually not even YouTube? It's pre-YouTube. It's just the internet.
Files. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody needs 1080p, Alex.
I had a PowerBook that I thought was actually pretty good, a Mac PowerBook, and it couldn't play the frame rate. Like, it was I'd download MacBreak Weekly, and I'd try to play it, and it would just be chopping because I couldn't even get it full screen.
Yeah, but you guys were still on koala powered internet back in those days.
It took me a week to download it. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the thing back then is, I was like, oh, well, we're going to need this eventually. But we did lots of funny things. Like, we learned we were doing 24p because it saved us bandwidth, because we were paying for all that, to stream it out. And a lot of what I've done in the past, pretty much since for the last 35 years, what I do is I throw the ball down the field really hard. like I'm going to go down and do something crazy and audacious. And then I just figure something's going to show up. And every time that I've done that, something shows up, and so I, because someone sees it. Like, we did the crazy thing at NAB, and then I ended up booking some work that did exactly that thing for some other stuff, and so that, and because someone saw it at NAB and said, oh, how do you do that? And can we hire you to do that? And I was like, sure. So, and as
a matter of fact, yes, you can.
Well, and it turned out to not be exactly the same thing, but it was actually in some ways way more complicated than what we had done at NAB, but it opened up the conversation. At the road to 1080p, and the thing is, it's all open. Like, if someone else had seen, hey, did you see the thing at NAB? And it was anybody in office hours, they could have pinged me, and I would have said, okay, well, here's how you do it. You do this and this and this and this. Because we're not trying to, hold on to it. We're trying to get all of us able to do these things. The road to 1080p paid off my camera. That camera was I bought it on sale. I got a really good deal on that camera. It was $82,000 less. It was down from $250,000, and it was $82,000. That was the biggest thing I'd ever purchased in my entire life at the time. And I was like, I'm gonna go. My wife was not super excited about it, and I told her that it would work out. and I put that thing up, and people saw it. And the next thing I knew, I was doing, and I explained what I was really doing there was explaining why you need to hire me for that camera. Because I was talking about 444, and suddenly everyone now knows that their camera is 422 and less than, and so now I actually had the only 444 camera in Northern California, because the only other company that had one, ILM, had sold theirs to me. So suddenly I had all this work, because everyone's like, well, if we're doing green screen, we have to hire, like, all these startups that were doing video were like, well, if we're doing green screen, we have to hire Pixel Core because they're the only ones with the right camera, and so it paid off the camera in a year, which was great.
So,
because
I was about to quip about to quip that the 444 camera was awesome back then, and yet we still can't stream to YouTube with that. But actually, in HDR,
there's almost no cameras. There's almost no cameras that are 444. I mean, you can
Right.
stream RAW, but you can't do live 444 because all the cameras are 422 outputs. You know, like it's we've actually gone backwards in that respect.
Yeah. So one of the things, Chris, I think you make a valid point about. I know when people were moving from VHS to DVD, and people were just like, you know, I don't see the difference. You know, I don't, and Blu-ray, and right, I don't. Most people don't see the difference. But one of the things that we talk about on this show a lot is the difference between what people think and what people feel, and we know that for audio, particularly, right? Like we focus primarily on audio and make it sound as best as we can because it makes it more comfortable to listen to, and people feel like they're closer to us when we sound closer. The more echo, the more distance, the harder it is to hear, the more headaches you get, things like that, right? So I wonder, Chris, do you think it's possible that while people don't think that it looks any better, that they feel like it does?
You know, Grant, you have a wonderful skill. You have a wonderful ability to make me feel stupid in the most polite way possible.
I think it's part of being Australian. I mean, I think that's what Australians are.
It's the accent.
Exceptional. It's the yeah.
Just have a think,
No,
Chris.
just have a think. I totally agree. There's very, very few times does the average, you know, civilian sit down and say, "Oh, gee, if only this was a few more Ks, I could actually enjoy this show." But that's not to say that given the choice, many of them, but not all of them, many of them would go, you know, they'll gravitate toward the screen that looks better. What I do know, because I used to sell TVs 100 years ago, is what's more important than the actual resolution is how bright it is. I'll just tell you that if I needed to sell a TV on the show floor, I'd go crank up the brightness a little, and it's like, oh, I like this one. Yeah, you should buy that. It'll look great in your living room. But I think that people don't people can't articulate what they like, right? They might like it better, but whether or not they're going to say, I couldn't possibly watch Real Housewives of Marin because it's not in 4K, that just doesn't happen. People are drawn to what they're drawn to. It's not to say I agree, Alex, the fence, the whole thing. And yes, you're very good at throwing the ball way down the field.
And I would say one thing a distinction that I would say there that you're kind of pointing towards, regardless of this specific one, is that I would say the difference between a professional and an amateur is that a professional can distinguish the elements that have you feel a certain way. You know, like, you know, in many, many places when it comes to that, they can tell you why that's the case, you know, like that, and they can, and that means they can execute it. You know, anybody can golf and get a hole in one, you know, early on, but can they do it regularly? And do they understand the mechanics of what's creating it? There's, you know, that's how you become consistent, is understanding the actual mechanics of the situation. So I do think that, I mean, I have had definitely, when we started doing 4K outputs, I know we did one in the White House where we, with Obama, and we did the whole pipeline in 4K, and this is probably 2016. And we did the whole, it was a very early, but we still streamed it to YouTube, but we got comments that felt like it was 3D, like it was so real to people when they looked at it, you know, because it was so much sharper than what they were used to looking at on YouTube, that it was, you know, that it had a different feel, you know, for them. And I think that is, that oversampling for whatever reason and coming down to that, you know, really stuck out. And I think that is, but they couldn't distinguish why. But that's because it's not just 4K, it's the oversampling to 1080p that makes it look smoother and makes it look sharper, and, you know, all those things as well.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I wanted to add as sort of the culmination to my curmudgeon rant here, Grant, is I think a lot of times, especially in this circle of super nerds, and I mean that as a compliment, it's very easy for people to watch this and go, I can't do that. It's like, you may not be able to. I was just telling a friend of mine, when you guys were going on about the 4K and the Vizar and the elemental Gs, I was texting with my friend who's watching, and I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about right now. I like none. And so, but I think it's important to realize that there are optimal best practices that you can aim for, but there's a lot of things that you can do even if you can't hit the ceiling. There's a lot of things that you can do. And I know that my friend Jeff, he's working on, putting together a little podcast for a friend of his, and he's not going to do 4K through VizRT or whatever. It's not going to happen.
And I don't think
that's okay.
Go ahead.
It's okay, and that there's still an audience, and really, and this is just, it's content versus, quality. Make sure the content's good, and it'll be fine, Jeff.
I very much don't think that everyone should do 4K 65.1 HDR. That is definitely not our point. Our point is that we should be constantly going down this, we're the sharp end of this, we're the sharp end of the stick, where we're trying to break out new areas that other people that down the road will be sometimes normalized or maybe not. But the point is to push those outer edges, because as we push those outer edges, we are literally helping to develop all the software that connects to our show gets better, and it opens it up, because right now we keep on running into things that, we keep on getting sliced up by this and dropping frames there, and this isn't working, and we have to figure out this pipeline, and people are changing the softwares to support what we're doing and making it better and making it more available as we point out, oh, by the way, on this outer edge, this isn't working. Like, this doesn't work here. And by us doing that, we're softening that area. We're cutting down. People
don't know what they want until you show them. And so, in an example earlier, Chris was bringing this up. The same thing. Why would somebody want 4K versus 1080? And I said, well, you see that interface of Vector? You guys can't see it right now, but in the back end we have the interface, and it's got little tiny buttons and little tiny text. And if I was to cut to that in a training session on YouTube, showing you a picture plus a logic interface, a Final Cut interface, any of these that have a lot of detail, all of a sudden training that you couldn't read before, and it just didn't make any sense. But if a client sees that, and here's the why now, it makes training better. And now it's all of a sudden, it's like, I don't care how you do it. I just want the result. I just show me how to, I'll pay whatever it costs, because now you're showing me something that makes sense to my communication to my company or to my staff.
And part of it is when you get good at it, and it becomes less effort for you, so that you can effortlessly hand it to a client. So as we figure this out and we publish it and people can start to add it, what I do oftentimes is I will do something for a client, and then every time they come back to me to do it again, I try to turn up a couple knobs. Like, I'm just going to make this a little bit better. And I know where those knobs are, and I know that they're not more expensive because I figured it out. Like, I've now figured out how to do that, so I can make it a higher quality at the same price for me, which means it's the same price for them. Now, what I'm doing is I'm value loading the system, and so I'm just constantly value loading the system. So it's a little better every time. It's a little bit more refined. And I look for 3 or 4 different things that I can improve every show to make it a little bit. Now, I don't talk to the client about that. I don't say, hey, we added this. What did you think of the color? What did you think of the thing? I don't do any of that, because I like them being unconscious to it, because you know what happens? If you pick somebody else, the fall off is really far, because I have been customizing my entire process and improving it every time you work with me. And if you go to somebody else, they don't know what those things are, and you don't know what those things are. All you know is that, wow, does this look not anywhere close to what I had before? And so I think that is, and oftentimes I don't even know what is important to the client, to make that work, because I'm just improving as many things as I can, because it also means I'm learning how to get better. I'm using every event to improve the pipeline, so that if a new client comes in, well, I figured all that stuff out, and now I just keep on trying to value add. Like, when we would do events where because this is one of the big advantages of owning a camera. I used to own lots of cameras. I still own lots of cameras, but I used to own a lot of cameras. And we just bring 2 or 3 extra cameras, and we just throw them in. We didn't talk about it. We didn't say, I'm throwing this extra camera in or anything else. The whole thing just worked a little bit smoother, and I knew that for the same price, you're not going to be able to find somebody else that can do that. So I just, and we would love, there was a point in time we loved competitive bids because we were like, well, go ahead, knock yourself out, see if you can get the same quality out of somebody else. It's because we've customized it for that.
And then that tech also alludes to the fact that you can remote control things, and we've tested the whole pipeline. So in an instance where, let's say, for instance, you don't want to fly in this extra head, you got the Uber cost, you got the flight, you got the hotel, you got the food. But now, what if you could have 3 more cameras that you could have them point at whatever you want, because all those feeds can be controlled. Like, I didn't even go to NAB. So this last year, for those of you that didn't know, I was sitting right here and I had a joystick when I was controlling 3 FR7s, or was there more than 3, 4? I was controlling a lot of cameras,
yeah, 4
cameras
FR7s.
remotely through a VPN. And that's the future to me, is just like, does that person really have to go, especially if it's like a Tony Robbins 5-day in Fiji? Do you really have to fly that person and, endure all the TSA, like searching through your stuff, and the guy in front of you putting his seat back and almost smashing your laptop screen? I mean, do you really want to deal with that?
And looking at like the quote unquote Belfast method, I'm working on, like, I really think that there's a great opportunity to live stream from recording studios. I'm not discussing that with anyone where I talk about bringing big crews in. Like, it's all like from the ground up. If I go into a recording studio where it's just the artists playing, it's all going to be remote. Like, there's not, maybe it's remote PTZ, maybe it's remote, but I'm not going to, we're going to tech it there, install things and lay things out, but I don't want to cut anything there. Definitely don't want to call it there. So those are the things that we're, but we've learned how to do that over time. And again, when we first did it, there's a whole bunch of, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't think of that. And if you do it all the time, it gets to a point where you can't think of not doing it that way.
Yeah. I'm interested in, Adrian, if you've got any observations on this topic. I just wanted to say hello to the people in the chat. We can see that happening there, and that there are a few questions that we've got. We're about to get to those, but please add any questions that you like. But Adrian, what do you think about this?
Yeah, of course, we may have a slightly different perspective, Grant, because we're at the other end of the world from most of the folks here. But just when we did NAB, and the ability to sit here and be in NAB and speaking directly to the booth people was absolutely amazing. And that only enhances the delivery for everybody else. We just need some way of more cameras and more people next year, I think. But yeah, as Alex said on the show on Sunday, we just need some money.
Well, yeah, if only it was in 4K, then it just would have felt like even more like we were there.
Well, and there's things in a lot of times. The other thing is being able to know when to pull back. So there were a couple things we did. The goal was 4K HDR 5.1. Like, that's what we wanted to do. And as we got closer and closer to NAB, the viability of making that work in the time frame that we had just didn't look like it was going to work. And I pulled the plug probably 3 or 4 days before. Like, it wasn't like we were going towards that. And I was like, but to get to Chris's point, I knew that's a great wow factor and that's a great whatever. But what's most important is a solid stream that works, and if it's breaking all the time or not, not working, and we had already pushed a whole bunch of envelopes. So the goal is to push all those envelopes over the next 2 months, 3 months, get to a point where, every 4K HDR 5.1, whatever, we call that Tuesday. It's not, it's not something that is like, oh my gosh, we have to rewire the whole thing. Like, I just sent today a 12G 40 by 40 router to Michigan to make sure that we can support the 4K 60, so that, because we think that that's the only missing piece, in the system to do 4K 60 through the entire pipeline. And so those are the kind of things that we're working on but get that all done, not 2 weeks before a show, but when there's nothing else going on is the time to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, we have our friend Sky in the chat who's like, story. But, think about it. This is bringing the story to people in a way that we couldn't before, because we're bringing in the NAB example, we're bringing in people that were experts that could ask better questions than the host could. So it's pretty amazing to bring those people in.
I have to say that NAB ruined me. Like I can't, it's hard for me to even watch it now. Like it's hard for me to watch somebody else do it. I thought it would be interesting. Like I thought it would be cool. It was theoretically interesting to me to do what we were doing. And in the second one, when we went to, I've talked about this before. I've already told the story of Grant. I know. When we went to Lindsay Optics and they were just totally talking to a screen and showing things and like pointing up to it, I was done. Like I was like, this is so much better than everything else I've ever seen. And there's going to be on the other side of this big camera system that I'm building here, I'm building a phone system to do exactly this, but in a little miniature, inexpensive solution to go to farmers markets. So there's a tank version that I'm building, but I'm also trying to figure out how to do a phone version that still has that same interactivity, because the idea that you have experts that don't have to be there, they're from all over the world. The advantages of that, I think people just have to be really clear of. The moderator, even if it's me or someone who's done this for a long time, is limited by their background. And so the questions that I'm asking, number one, is I have to come up with them by myself in real time. I have to know that specific subject deeply. I can't have a moment to think because we're going back and forth. And so when you have 6 or 8 people, no one else gets to do that. It's like 6 or 8 people walking around asking people questions on the floor. Oh, and by the way, we have hundreds watching the show able to throw their questions in too. That hive mind wandering around in real time asking those questions is, for me, it was transformational. Like I was like, we found an entirely new kind of content. To get back to what Sky's talking about, the story, now we're going to make it look really nice, but we understand what the model is. Like we understand that model of interaction is superior to anything we've seen at a conference.
Yeah.
The only thing missing, Alex, is when you do go to the event, you get to like pull that little map out and decide what booth you want to go to next. So maybe we could do some sort of like a tip jar. Like if you pay enough money, we'll go to this booth for you.
Well, I mean, my goal is that eventually you hit so many booths that you feel like you could see everything, or you could go back and watch it. So right now we only stream for a couple hours. What happens when we stream from the moment the conference opens, moment the expo opens to the moment it closes every single day? And we have 2 or 3 systems, so it's tight and we're going back and forth as, we just keep queuing them up. And then what happens when that splits into multiple channels? So for instance, if we start getting to a point where there's one channel that's just the video and one channel that's just the audio and one channel that's just, whatever infrastructure or whatever that is now, and we're doing it from start to finish. If you talk about coverage like that, you're now you will see more of the expo than you could possibly walk to, from your home. And again, it brings an incredible amount of value to the expo, because we always talk to people, and fortunately NAB is very progressive and they understand the model. Like they get it that not everyone can make it. And so they understand that it increases the value for paying expo presenter. If you have a booth there, we're potentially down the road bringing hundreds or thousands of people to your booth at one time, and you don't get that, so you're more likely to buy a booth. Like we need the expo to exist because we need to be able to walk every 10 feet and find somebody new rather than having to work it all out. So the expo becomes very valuable to us, but it's also very valuable to the exhibitors, because we're taking that show and making it way more valuable for them per square foot for them. To do that. So that's good for the conferences because that's where they make all their money. I mean, the panels,
not only the live, the rewatch. Because if you think about the rewatch time, this will live on for years. So if there's some little product that didn't get much, news on day of show, but later on throughout the year, somebody else brings it up, and now they have a pointer to go look at the close-up, look at the rear view, what's on the back panel. Some of this stuff, you don't get to see it unless somebody like us shows it.
And sometimes the content is better. I did one on monitors in motion. I did my own whatever, this was back when we just did ones where I would talk to the person and then ask them questions, and then I would just turn around and spit it all out in one short little clip with one single camera clip and show things and everything else. They used that on their website for 5 years. Like it was, like they were like, because it was the best description that they had. because not everyone's a broadcaster, and so the opportunity to have a conversation is way better for them than to make their own video. Like, imagine them making their own video about their product, having skilled people come over and ask them good questions about their product. And we're not, especially skilled people who are not in gotchas. We're not trying to like catch you on something. We're just interested in your product. And I think that is a different view of that process. And so I do think that we've stumbled onto the future, and we'll make the video look really great too. But I think that by the time we get to next NAB, I think we have an opportunity to do some pretty interesting coverage.
So. Sounds good. We're going to get to some questions, Guy, in a second. But when we get there, Chris, you were saying about selling TVs 100 years ago, which, I mean, wouldn't be possible because they weren't invented. Well, they were invented, but they weren't selling then. But you were familiar with 19...
They were 15 years out. They were still...
Let's go to the fact check. I'm
going to guess that it was 1938.
Oh, he's gone close. So Telefunken in Germany was first CRT televisions made commercially available in 1934. Then it was later.
I think it was in the
France
first World
Britain.
Fair was 1938, maybe.
So then the cheapest model was the 12-inch with the 12-inch screen was $445, which is equivalent to nearly $10,000 today. So
take that, all you Apple Vision Pro. This isn't going to work. It's twice as much as an Apple Vision Pro in today's dollars.
All right. But the point is, let's not get Chris fired up on the goggles. But we're going to get to this first question, which I think, Chris, you'll have a lot to say about. Guy.
All right. First one's coming in from Lois Richter in Davis, California. And she asks, what are your thoughts about the idea of retiring?
Anyone? Chris, do you have any thoughts?
Wow, really? You're just going to toss that to me? What does that mean? Are you saying I'm plenty old enough I should, or would you please?
He's looking for the wisdom, so he's going to the elders.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll go ahead, Chris.
I will say this. There comes a point. My birthday is Saturday. I'm going to turn 62. Sorry, honey. 72. Sunday. My 62 years old. 72. See, I'm not as sharp as I used to be.
Wheels are coming off. Yeah, exactly.
Totally coming off. I make decisions now based on. I don't know if I'm going to be around that long. I don't have to worry about that. I mean, literally, I think not be around like on the planet, but be around in the industry. I do think about it. It's like, it's not that I hate my job. It's not that I don't like the people that I work with. I do. But you get to the point where you realize there's a lot more life than sitting at these desks and pushing these pixels that we do. There's a lot more to life, and I want to do more of it. My wife has got me, we're going to Colorado to see the grandkids for Christmas. So that's much more important than any video I'm going to make this year or next.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of family that retires. Like, it's just not like, I think there's a cultural thing. Like, you don't see that picture very often in my family of people who are retired. And if they are retired, they're very busy retired. Like, if they get retired, they're still doing lots of things. Like, they have lots of things. And sometimes they're more busy than they were when they were working, because it was less structured, and now they just take on more things. I do think that, I would like to get to a point where I'm not worried about, like paying bills, like right now I could go a little bit, but not very far, without paying the bills. So getting to a point where I'm not thinking about the day-to-day, cash flow and everything else would be great. I think that I would not, like, if I won the lottery, I've joked that I would buy a lottery ticket. If I bought a lottery ticket, I'd buy it as office hours because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have to pay taxes on it. So anyway, if office hours won the money, my wife was like, "But then you can't use the money." I'm like, "Yeah, but I have a huge amount of cash in the toy chest, and I just get to play for the rest of my life, And so the thing is, like, so I was like, that's a pretty good deal for me. I don't need them. I don't need the money. I don't need a bigger house. I don't need a lot of those things. So I think that for me, I just don't know what I would do with myself. Like, I know that when I went from not even retiring, but when I went from Lucasfilm, where I was working 85 hours a week, to ILM, where it was enforced at 45 by the union, I suddenly had 40 hours a week, and I almost went crazy. Like, I was like, I have no idea what to do with myself. This is back before you had phones and laptops, and I didn't have any connectivity at home. And so I was like completely, like, when I left the office, I was like in nothing land. I found some stuff, but I quickly just figured out how to skirt around the rules and go back to work.
Just had to watch your little 12-inch TV that you had just then.
The funny thing is, when you're in a union thing and you don't want to play by union rules, normally what happens is people are watching videos, and then when the boss comes in, they turn the videos off and look like they're working. I would be working, and I turn the videos on when the union guys walked in to see if I was working. I'd be watching quick times of fun things. Like I had this thing where I could hear the door, and so I would very quickly put videos back up, and I'm just messing around. I don't have connectivity at home, blah 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 blah. And as soon as they left, I put it back and I opened up Electric Image and went back to working on a Star Wars shot. So it was a different reverse problem. So anyway, I don't see myself retiring.
Yeah, I think that the key that I think about is that we have some people in this community that are retired and continue to give back. I think of people like Courtney, who is on, most days, sharing a whole bunch of wisdom that he has, and knowledge and skills. And I was thinking about that only this week, about looking forward to that time in my life where hopefully there is something like office hours, where I'm not even having to leave my house. I can just sit in a seat and connect with people all over the world, and have this sense of community and giving back and sharing and learning and doing that. I never want to stop that, I want to continue that. And similarly, Alex, my dad's still working full time, and he's 74 this year, and he's works in maintenance, and he loves it. It's a dream job. Why would he want to finish
to me,
it?
Like, if I was able to figure out a way that office hours made enough money that I could pay my bills, I would happily just be teaching people how to do this stuff and figuring those things out. That's definitely my happy place. My daughter won't let me take big cameras to her, recitals, like that she does at school. So I finally talked to her teacher, and I was like, I have cameras. Like, I can come in and we can teach all your kids how to shoot, and definitely roll cables, because I watch them roll cables. It hurts. So but I'm just, so my whole thing is I'm going to build a little army of video folks inside the high school, and just teach them how to shoot. They have their own production folks there, so there's some people with already some stuff there, but it, we're going to tighten it up a little bit and have, a bunch of big cameras and start calling shows, but for me, that's a pastime. Like, I do that for fun, and I think that if I retire, it'll be to do exactly what Courtney's doing, which is like, let's just build training or do things and have some fun and show people how to do it.
So if you'd like to make that happen, officehours.global/donate. And if we can get enough people to do that, then we can free Alex up to do this full time.
Right now, we're just trying to make enough money that I'm not pushing money into
going backwards.
Donate. We also have officehours.global/shop, where you can get a cool T-shirt and support office hours at the same time. So
there you go. Very good. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. And he says, have you come across any examples of voice de-aging that you found particularly impressive or not? Any deep thoughts on this?
Alex?
There's a lot of video. I haven't seen any that are doing great de-aging for voices. I mean, obviously there's tons of video production. I'm kind of really looking at, I'm interested in seeing what happens with Here, the movie that Zemeckis is working on right now, or it's finished and it's going to get released, where they did a lot of heavy de-aging for Tom Hanks, and her name jumps out of my head. So there's a lot of de-aging in that film, and so it'll be interesting to see how that works in video. I haven't seen any good de-aging in audio. I'm sure it may exist, but I haven't seen it done well. It's really hard to do that without losing the character. It's hard to do it in video without losing the character, but it's really hard to do it in audio without losing the character of the person, and feeling like it. And with all of these things, I think sometimes we're willing to suspend disbelief when we're watching a movie. But this gets back into what we were talking about earlier. Even if you don't notice it, a lot of times it being artificial makes people uncomfortable. You know, like, and I think that there's a whole lot of that in a whole lot of places. You know, of artificialness makes people uncomfortable. I will argue.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Paul. Did that one just jump? Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. Some of us use Mac and PC equally without bias. What are tips for making the two platforms more consistent and compatible?
Guy?
Yeah, I wind up bouncing back and forth, especially I just got the new Mac Mini M4, which is a heck of a deal for $599. And if you happen to have a kid that's a college kid, you can get an educational discount too. So that knocks it down to $500. So I have one for testing, and eventually the kid will get it. But right now I'm having fun with it, and I control it with a PC. So it's kind of funny where I have multiple Macs, multiple PCs, and I can control them, and I move back and forth between all of them. So my Macs are good for Final Cut. I have a powerful PC that's great for Resolve. So it just depends on what I'm doing, and using these different tools like Splashtop or Google Remote Desktop, or there's another one called Jump Desktop. So I use those 3 different ones depending on where I'm at. So in my car, I have a PC laptop, an old clunker, that I can pull that out, hook up to it with my cell phone, and I could control a 10 gigabit connection at home. So I could toss files around in Dropbox, and I'm like, oh, that file's done exporting. All right, let's kick it over now and upload it to YouTube. And I'm in the back of my van, just on the side of the road, uploading on a 5-year-old laptop. But it's seamless. So it just depends on what you want to do and what kind of productions you're doing and how powerful of a machine you need. But bear in mind that you can, again, remote into other machines and use the power of the machine that might be down the hall. So when I saw some of these people that are getting the latest and greatest laptop, I'm using my 16-inch Intel i9 that cost me like $4,000. I'm using that to control the Mac Mini, and the Mac Mini's, really fast, but I get the big screen on the laptop. So it just, again, depends on what you want to do. But bear in mind, don't get rid of your old tech. You could use it to control the new tech.
Alex?
Yeah, I think John Snyder has a really good. He said, first tip: don't expend too much effort trying to make them the same. Let them be good for let them be what they're good at. And I think that's the case. I don't try to make the PCs do what the Mac does or the Mac does. I don't try to figure out how those are to make those two things there. I have PCs, I have Linux machines, I have Macs, and the biggest thing that I have to figure out generally is file transfer. Like, getting files, having a shared, some kind of NAS or some kind of unified system that I'm able to drop things from the PC and get them over to the Mac and vice versa. That's usually the thing that I worry about the most, because the other stuff is, you're in the PC environment, you're working in the PC environment. And again, I rarely try to use the same apps. Also, I'm not using this. And the reason that's important is I don't have to worry about the keystrokes. Like, the keystrokes can, instead of command, it's control and all those things. I don't think about that much because the apps that I'm using on the PC are, Unreal and some photogrammetry stuff and some very specific things that are PC. And I don't try to use those on the Mac. I just use them on the PC. So I think that part of that makes it easier. I'm not looking for a kind of a unified experience.
Adrian?
Yeah, Alex ate my lunch. The glue behind, have a NAS or something so that you can get the files between the devices. But it's the right tool for the job. I've got some apps that don't run particularly well on the PC, even though they're supposed to, but they run like a dream on the Mac. So we'll just go and run them on the Mac, and then unify the front end, common keyboard, common mouse, one KVM, so that you got single control. And I can swap between the screens, so I can put the Mac up on that screen, I can put the PC up on that screen, or I can picture in picture. So, yeah, there's no point in really making them the same. They've got different skills, and the same for Linux. We've got some little Raspberry Pis and some NUCs and things sitting around here running Debian and Ubuntu that have their own skills, and just like people, play to our differences.
Yeah, I think that I do the same. I have a bunch, I use Mac as the daily driver for, doing all the work that I need to do. But then when it comes to PowerPoint, as good as PowerPoint works on a Mac, it's better on PC. There's some features on the PC that just work better. Simple things like the laser pointer looks better on PC than it does on a Mac. And so when I have to use PowerPoint for shows and whatever, and because, occasionally get someone with Keynote and you celebrate that, but most of them are still just using PowerPoint, running that on a PC just works better. And so the thing that helps me, and to Alex's point about file transfer, I'm just a big Dropbox fan. I did just pay $3,000 for the year, so it's not like I'm only using it a little bit. But with 30 terabytes available, I set up all the Macs and PCs have all got Dropbox on them, all controlled as to what they see, and share individual folders and things like that. When an event comes, we have one account that goes out on all of the show machines, and we just share the folder for that event, and away it goes and syncs everywhere, Mac, PC, everywhere. And I'm not transferring files; they're already there, right? That's what's even better. I'm not thinking about how to transfer them across, and actually doing the process of transferring them. It's already there. All the files are everywhere. And then the event finishes, and we unshare it, and it removes it all from them. We share the next event, and now it's syncing everywhere. So Dropbox makes that really nice across all those different devices. And then using Chrome and logging into a profile in Chrome across Mac and PC, you still have all your favorites and bookmarks and tabs and all of that syncing across them too. I think that works really well too. So that's something I like. And Paul was just saying about he uses a remote PC. What's so great about Splashtop? I've really loved Splashtop. I've really jumped on board. I really like how great it is from the phone and from a tablet. It works really nicely. And then the sharing of the sound as well is really cool. Like hearing the sound in whatever you're doing. I had to log in and do some Final Cut recently, and I could hear Final Cut play out perfectly. It looked great. It sounded great. And Guy, I think you were saying you've been playing around with the USB device redirection as well.
Yeah, it'll actually do device redirect. I just wanted to show this. This is what an account would look like. Like here's my Mac Mini M4. So that's this Splashtop. Then this is my Alienware. That's this machine. So I got multiple machines here open, and I could open up as many as my computer will handle. But then if I want to, do something in Final Cut, this machine is available on my PC. This is available and all across the world. And then for Paul's question about file transfer, it is here where you can say like between my B-Link, and this is like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old B-Link. And, you could transfer anything from the remote to the local. And then there is that option to do device redirection. So like a Stream Deck. I don't have the drivers on this machine. Once you install the drivers, you can do device redirect, and you can have those things to where the Stream Deck will appear on the other side. So it's really cool in that regard.
And what's the membership level do you guys have for Splashtop?
$15. So I have the next one up. There's like a basic one, and then there's one more up that gives you higher color fidelity and better audio. So you have like a medium quality setting, and then I noticed that if you do pay the extra $5 a month, you get not only better color but better sound, and then there's some granular permissions that you can give on a per computer basis as well. So you can assign people to certain machines.
This is business access performance, 444 color accuracy, 240 frames a second. There you go. High fidelity audio, remote stylus.
Yep.
Looks
so you
like
could,
all the things.
You could be doing, you could have your Wacom tablet at the remote side, and you can be controlling a high-end machine up in the cloud. That's the thing. Like when I started speccing out a new laptop and it's like $8,000, I'm like, I'm scared to carry around an $8,000 laptop. If I lose an $8,000 laptop, that hurts. If I lose a $1,000 laptop, it's not as bad. So I'll control my $8,000 computer from afar, or multiple of them, or rent one in the cloud for it's about $2 an hour for our vector machine. Not even that, like $1.50. And it's a pretty powerful machine, and it's got a 4,000 megabit connection to the internet. So it's pretty amazing when you get to control a machine that has fast internet. You're on a 5 megabit hotel connection, but you're controlling 4,000 or 5,000 megabit up in the cloud.
Yeah, it is cool. I've had a Mac Stadium Mac sitting in my Splashtop account for a long time. You just open it up and do something quickly, and it's really handy to have a Mac
Were you
to be
just
able to
using
do that
screen
wherever you
sharing,
are.
or what app were you using, Grant, for your Mac Studio?
I did. No, I was using Splashtop in the
But
end.
originally, before we told you about Splashtop, what were you using?
All right, don't try to get extra credit here, Guy. All right. No, I remember
an affiliate code.
I remember I did have Splashtop installed on my iPad, and because I got it. There was there's this thing called apps gone free, and you can, if you search for apps gone free, there's a bunch of sites that talk about the apps that are either temporarily free or they've gone from being paid to free. And at one point, 10 years ago, Splashtop was that. And so I had it and I'd played around with it, but they've since totally changed their pricing model, and then I started playing. But yes, I was using. I think I was enjoying the fact that Mac Stadium has a public IP, which means that you can just screen share directly to it. You didn't have to VPN. You don't have to do anything. You could just go straight to that IP address, and away it goes. But Splashtop was easier, and
way quicker frame rate, because you can go all the way up. Yeah. So there's a little checkbox that says enable quick, and if you have hardware on here, like one of my machines that has a really fast NVIDIA card, and if I enable quick on that thing, man, it just really feels snappy. It's so quick, and the color, it just really feels like you're there. But yeah, when I first got my Mac Stadium, they gave me the credentials for something like VPC, VPN Connect or something. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, this thing's a dog. It was worse than TeamViewer. I was like, this is just rough. I mean, the mouse was like skipping across the screen, and it was just like, how do people do this?
And so you can do so it's up to 10 computers, so you can have 10 computers that are 10 on
for each count
per user.
Per user. Yeah. So if you have, so like I have 3 users on here, so that's 30 computers.
Right.
Yeah. I've got 2 at the moment, and I'm about to go to a third. It's crazy how many how many computers you realize you have once you start.
And the USB device redirection, that's so you can put like a Stream Deck onto it, or
whatever, anything USB,
or whatever you want. Anything USBs.
Interesting.
Yeah. So here's a trap for young players, and that is that I got caught the other week. Adrian, we were in your fair. Well, I wasn't, but my company was in your fair country, and so the boys had changed the time on the computers on these little NUCs to make sure it was all right. When we got it back, it didn't sync the time properly, so the time on those computers was out. And Guy, did you know this? That the streamer won't work if the time is out, because it's a whole security thing in the certificate, and so it just wouldn't connect. So I could not understand. And these are headless computers, and so it was just such a hassle to try to work out how I was going to make this thing work. In the end, all the PC lovers out there will appreciate this. These are these little, what are they? The little NUCs. They're not called NUCs though. The G something, G NUC, whatever it is. That the like $100 machines, but they come with $150, I think they are, and they come with Windows 11 Pro. Windows 11 Pro has remote desktop enabled, and so I went to remote desktop. I got into the computer, reset the time, streamed it.
That's a good tip right there. Is if you're buying a computer, spend the extra money to get Windows Pro from the get-go if you can, because you can RDP in. It's free included with Windows Pro. If you just get Windows Home, you don't get RDP. And in a case like that, you can't even do like wake up LAN. So one of the things that Splashtop's not as good at is RDP. RDP, you can actually wake on LAN, send that magic packet. So I've had, when I was on the road, I was like, oh man, I need to wake up that computer. Splashtop's not waking it up. And then I'd RDP in and boom, it would wake it up. So there is a difference there. So tip, if you were looking at comparing computers, Windows Pro is the way to go for a number of reasons, but RDP is one of them.
There you go. Gee, our questions per minute is not great tonight, but that's all right. That's what extra hours is. We'll be okay. We'll see if we can get through the rest of these. Come on, Chris. It's going to be all right. Retirement is just as close. It's just as close. It's going to be all right. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois, and he asks, will you please explain the Z, which I believe he's talking about the Zowie box that Grant referenced. What is this, please?
Go ahead, Guy. Oh, look at that.
Okay, so mine's powered over Ethernet, so it's just a little box that looks like this. You can mount it on your camera. Most of us are using it as a HDMI to NDI converter. Now, normally these things from like BirdDog would be like $450 that do full NDI. So there's two flavors of NDI. One's full fat NDI, which is like 120 megabits a second with in its full color fidelity. NDI HX3, we're getting down to like 16 megabit or something like that. So this is not a full NDI device. So it's about $160. It's super cheap compared to the BirdDog, but it doesn't do that conversion. So if you just want to send HDMI from like a building to a building, this is a great little box. And it also is an encoder for RTMP, SRT. I think those are the two. Oh yeah, and then one more. What's that old one? There's something else that it does.
Yeah, you can do the local, like a local server as well, right? Like on it.
Yeah.
And you can
1935 port. Yeah, I guess that is just RTMP.
RTMP.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use it as a local RTMP server as well if you just want to toss something across a network. So for that kind of money, and it's got Tally. So right now I don't have Tally going, but this side is Tally, and then it has that loop through, so you can loop it back out. So you go HDMI in 4K. That's the crazy thing is this is 4K. So yeah, my BirdDog one, super expensive. That's 4K that's sitting over here, and this one's super cheap. So if you want to get into NDI and just want to play with it a little bit, it's a great device to get. I mean, it's an encoder or a decoder, so you're not buying two separate boxes. You're buying one, and you can turn the working mode from encode to decode, whereas a lot of the other ones, so I have some Kilo views over here that are just encoders, and then you have to buy the decoder as well. So if you get to an event and you're like, oh, I need to do the other thing, it's like, well, you're hosed, so you have to use a computer or something.
Do you know the other thing it does is USB webcam to HDMI? So you can plug a webcam into it, USB, and go out HDMI or NDI. Like it takes a webcam input. And the other thing I saw is that you can do overlays on it as well.
Scoring,
you can do scoreboard and like it's amazing.
It's pretty simple, pretty cheesy. Yeah, but if you had like a logo, a bug, you could import a little picture and you could throw a little bug on there. So that's it's
like time code or something. And the fact that I'm using it now to convert 4K to NDI and to NDI bridge is amazing. And it was one of those moments that you're proud of, where you have a tool in your toolkit that you forgot has a feature that is going to work for you, and then isn't that one of the Chris, you would appreciate that with the woodworking, right? When you're like, oh, I have the exact right tool for the job. It's very satisfying.
It's one of my favorite things. It's absolutely my favorite. I love it when there's something I want to do. It's like, oh, I have all the stuff for that. And you just walk out in the garage, build it, be done. So fun.
There it all is. All the right tools. Yeah. That's what Alex is going to get when he wins the lottery. But the lottery is for office hours. And so it'll just be a workshop full of all the gear.
Oh, it wouldn't be a workshop. It'd be like a 5-story building. Like if I won the lottery, I would just build this giant studio, and like we're just all gonna have fun. Do we need a techno crane? We'll get one. I would
Office Hours Global Library. It would be the library where you can come and borrow gear.
We'd have an apartment complex, because I can spend $100 million in a couple of weeks, on just because I think about that kind of thing all the time. Like the best part of buying a lottery ticket is that, you could spend $2 on a video game and not last like 10 seconds. And you're like, well, there goes the $2 on that game. Or you can spend $2 and spend the next week thinking about how you're going to spend that money. And you're never going to win. But you weren't gonna get anything more out of the video game. So I get to imagine building a giant studio that's 5 stories high and has an apartment complex and a movie theater.
He's thought about it.
I have designs. I have
question.
drawings.
Next question.
And a sushi conveyor belt. Ian Moorish in Wellington, New Zealand. Forgot about the sushi conveyor belt. Ian Moorish in Wellington, New Zealand asked, just throwing in a confidence camera shows a wow factor if you are backstage at an event.
Alex?
Such a great point that he brings up here is it's not just about the event working. It is all the creature comforts that you provide to your client that is related to the event. So these what he's talking about, I think what he's talking about with confidence cameras, a lot of times we throw up little wide angles, fish eyes and wide angles in the corners of the theater of the stage so that we can see what's going on. So you can see what's going on the stage, because a lot of times your show cameras may not show that. Like at that moment, those cameras aren't there, but like, where is he standing? He's in the wrong place, or the light's out, or, the light, he's out of the pool of light, or he's out of whatever. And so a lot of times we'll have 2, 3, 4, and we've learned to turn we get production quality cameras. We used to use GoPros, and we learned to go to production quality cameras because the clients see it and they go, why don't we just cut to that? And I'm like, because that's a confidence camera. And they're like, but it looks great because it's like this wide angle and you see the person walking out, and you see all the 15,000 people out there. And so we had, we learned to put, we use a lot for these cameras. We use a lot of the production, whatever you're drinking, it's carbonated. I don't know what it is.
Sorry.
Anyway, it sounded like pop rock.
It's not
anyway,
tea.
So
it's not tea anymore. Here it is.
Yeah. Anyway, so anyway, but we learned to use the micro studios from Blackmagic with some good lenses on them and put them up there rather than the GoPros, because people kept on asking, and we figured, well, we better be able to shade them and better able to do all the other things that we do with them. But all of these things add more value. And I think that people very much like, well, we survived it. It's not enough. Like, how did you sound on comms? How did how did the client feel? We talk about how the audience feels. How did the client feel from the time they hired you to the time that the show is done? How do they feel? Like, were you responsive? Did you send them the things that they needed? Was there a lot of tussling over something? Was there a lot of this stuff? And the more, it's not that that's ever perfect, but the more you pay attention to those things, the more work you get from that client. And so I think that a lot of these things are really important for the client and for the team.
Adrian?
I was just going to throw a shout out to Ian, because I worked with him for a number of years. We need you on the panel, mate. Come on, over this side.
There we go. Very good.
Come on, Ian.
Yeah, more Kiwis, mate.
Yeah, we call them witness cameras. This guy, Matthew Parker, who's sometimes on the in After Hours, he showed some of the stages, and the talent behind the stage will take cues from a certain person, the stage manager, just like, go, like they're hitting their mark and you're on. So those things have been around, like they're all black and white and all dusty and been around there for 20 years. But in this new environment, when we did Mad in the Kitchen, I actually brought a Zoom room running on an old laptop with a PTZ camera. And then I said in the Zoom room, allow anyone who requests camera control to take over. So that was our witness camera, where anybody can go ahead and watch. It was just another participant in the event, but they could see behind the scenes. And if we needed a close-up, some people were starting to abuse it, so we had to relegate it to not let everybody take control over it. But if you can give that camera control to one person and they could handle the zooms, and for the remote people, they can see, the big overview, the big eagle's eye view, but then also have another camera that you can punch in and look at some fine detail. So it's something to think about for these event, hybrid type events where you want to see what's going on, but you're not there. You're 2,000 miles away. So something to think about. Yeah,
it is. Actually, the thing that reminds me of too, guys, events that we've worked on that are totally remote, and we have like our green room, and we have our crew that just have their cameras on, sitting in a Zoom meeting, builds a lot of confidence for the client. And in fact, there's times where we forget to turn it back on after we've taken a break or whatever, and the client's like, "Hey, are you guys still there?" Or so just seeing that gallery view for a totally virtual event builds a lot of confidence as well. And I like the other way around. You can see, and we would all on those particular events, we'd still just use comms. We wouldn't talk into Zoom at all, but we were talking to each other. So it was a great way of seeing, just giving you more eyes, right? Like it works really well.
And I think that to your point, the virtual events, really thinking about the multiple days and multiple rooms, and this is something I learned from Grant, was, we were talking about how do we get people in and everything else, and Grant was talking to me, this is years ago, was mentioning we take them out of the main room and put them into, and he started talking about prepping people in these, and then it became, I think I've talked about it before, we became the Emerald City protocol, because I explained it to a client. I was like, it's like the Emerald City, where you go do, 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 do. And it just came out of my mouth while I was talking in a meeting. And then the client started calling, well, are we doing the Emerald City for this one? Because there was a client did often stuff. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do the Emerald City.
Emerald City, sure.
But it became the shorthand. It was shorthand because, but it was like, it just made it up. But the point is that became something, it really makes a difference. We use it in office hours every day. You get into a main room, you get brought into a green room, you get prepped and everything else, and then you go into the show. And there's a process there that gets you synced up and make sure that you're ready to go, and you're not just jumping in front of a bunch of other people. And again, all of those things, reducing the stress level of the client, of the talent, of the everyone, is something that makes a huge difference. It's beyond just whether the show survives,
Very good. Next question.
Next one's coming in from our friend Bo Cordell, and he asks, I have a MixPre 3 plugged into an OWC dock into my MacBook Pro. Noticed some audio dropouts today when rewatching a Teams meeting. The MixPre wants to be plugged in directly, doesn't it?
Adrian?
Yeah, Bo, it probably does. I've had exactly the same thing going in through a hub, but I've also had it going from a cable that was USB-C on the MixPre end to USB-A on the PC or the Mac. And I got dropouts there. So putting in a decent quality USB-C to USB-C cable and going direct to the device should sort most of your problems out.
Yeah. Bo, I think your main problem is the Teams meeting. You know better than that. You shouldn't be using Teams. Chris?
Friends use Teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bo, you need to make some changes to your life. If you're at a stage where you're re-watching Teams meetings, that's scary. And actually, Alex, I know you wanted to say something. Am I the only one that has the problem where a MixPre, literally every morning, whether I power it off or not, every morning I have to unplug it, plug it back in before anything works?
I had that problem and it went away, and I don't have an answer for why. I didn't change it.
You're not as much help as you usually are.
I know I don't know what happened, but I didn't even think about it until you just said it. That right, I haven't had that problem, because it was almost every day. Now
every day.
I'm not on.
Not almost.
It was
every day. It's so consistent.
It wasn't every day for me, but it was definitely a couple times a week. Trying to think of what I did differently.
So Chris, do you check whether it's working, or you just do it by
No,
default
it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work.
You can't hear it. Yeah, you can't hear it. You can't hear them.
It's not that I check it, but it's like that stupid thing. Unplug, plug back in, done.
Yeah. I think it might have been some OS update. Are you on the very newest? Are you on 18?
I've done all the updates, all the stuff, all the things. Actually, you know what? Come to think of it, there might be a firmware update to the MixPre.
And I know that now that we're talking through it, I think that I might have done a firmware update to the MixPre and then stopped having that problem.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about when I did the firmware. When the firmware came out, when I think about it, I can't think of a time after that I had the problem.
And this isn't one of those things where you think you know. This is.
I don't know. I'm gonna look at the date that the firmware came out.
Adrian, Chris, this was definitely an issue a couple of firmware releases ago. So an update to your firmware on the MixPre should sort it out.
I got to go find a disk. Okay.
You don't have to use
I always
disk.
keep mine direct. after I got bit by that, I always plugged it in direct. So it's just USB-C to USB-C right in, and I just quit messing. I surpassed the dock. I don't use the dock at all for the mix pre. It takes that port. It's its own, and I haven't had a problem since. But I remember being bit by that.
Use the SD on the mix pre, Chris, for the update.
Yeah, and when was it? When did you say the firmware update was?
Probably about 18 months ago.
Oh, it wasn't that long ago. But a lot of times I have a bad habit of not updating the mix pre's until like, oh, I should do this, and I haven't thought about it for a long time. But I don't think I had the problem for 18 months, so I don't know. And maybe it wasn't that case. But what I will say is that in general, the two things that absolutely get a direct port are the mix pre and my ATEM. Like those things, taking those and pushing them through hubs has never been very stable. Now, the danger is that it can work. It depends on what's going on in the hub. But if you put both of those into the hub, you're definitely going to have a problem because a lot of bandwidth for the hub. The backplane on the hub is not fast enough to do both video and audio. If you have those connected to your mouse and your keyboard, it might not be a problem. But anything, if you have the mix pre connected to a hub with a hard drive, won't work. Like the hard drive will saturate the backplane inside of the hub every time it just checks. Like every time the system just goes, "Hey, how you doing?" You're going to have breakup. And so that's you can't have drive. So all you can do is really keyboard and mice connected to the hub with audio and video. That's my opinion. I haven't tested it in a lab over and over again, but from my experience when I was trying to use hubs, that became the thing we had to do.
Makes sense. It does remind me that the firmware updates on more modern devices. Obviously, sound devices are modern, but I had the Rode Podcaster little mixer. Plug it in it sees the internet. Oh, there's a new firmware update. Installs it. Done. It was just like, I love that. There's no USB drives and, make sure it's FAT32, like there's all these steps that you go through and then you cross your fingers that it's going to work okay. There's just these internet connected devices that just know. They just make it happen. I love it.
Sometimes, there's been problems with that for some big companies where they just went, "Hey, there's an update. I'm going to update it." Took out half the internet. So so automatic updates can be, well, sometimes they're good.
It's not so much automatic as just an easy process, I think is the point on it. But well, I mean, we did have recently on a show an ATEM constellation during a break. Just wanted to check one of the settings, and when you have an old version of the setup of the ATEM, and you go and you open the setup, and it says, "Oh, do you want to update the software?" That button, the button combination there to cancel or to update, can be a little bit confusing on the fly, and when you're quick, and so someone opened it on an old machine and was just like, "Oh yeah, cancel." Didn't hit cancel, hit update.
And off it went.
And what do you do then? And it was rolling it back to old software, anyway. I'm getting worked up just thinking about it again. We managed to stumble our way through it. It was all right. All right. Last question there.
Last one's coming in from Bo Cordell. Bitcoin has hit an all-time high. Anybody seeing issues getting GPU instances from AWS these days?
Alex?
And for the listeners, the issue is there's a breakpoint. So there's a breakpoint in the value of the Bitcoin when doing GPU usage to mine for Bitcoins is not efficient in the cloud. It's expensive. But when it gets high enough, it's not even if you can make a 10% margin or a 1% margin, people do the math and go, well, I can mine for Bitcoins at $60,000 a Bitcoin and sell it for $70,000 a Bitcoin. So there's money there. So people start turning all of those on, and everybody gets going. With the hardware, the last time I checked, with the hardware, it was somewhere in the vicinity of This was a couple of years ago, so it's probably gotten worse. But it was like somewhere in the range of $16,000 to $18,000 a Bitcoin to process. So it was like if you had a GPU hanging, like literally hanging, and being identified, like that's how they have them in China. They have these rooms with these GPUs just hanging on wire, so that they, they could get them for a relatively low price, and it's very profitable. But the question is, where is that break point? I don't know where it is now, and where it sits in front of like how much it costs to produce one. Maybe Guy knows what that number is.
Yeah, Guy.
It's probably there now. So a few
at
years ago,
87,000. The last time I saw it was I thought it was that's so much.
So what you can mine is not Bitcoin in AWS. It's Ethereum. So we set up these CloudFormation scripts, and we went to all the different regions around the world to figure out who had what. So we spent a lot of time on this, where we went in and we set them up in different data centers, and we were losing money. So we were doing it just for fun, just to see if one day when it went up, would we want to turn it back on. So I'll put a link to the scripts that you can get for Ethereum, and then basically you just let it run. It puts it inside of it's wrapped ETH in. Puts in your MetaMask wallet, and I got to go check mine now because it's gone up so much that that stuff that I had laying in there from 3 years ago has tripled in value. So back then it was a losing venture, but to answer the question, nowadays it's going to be worth it. I was able to fire up my AWS instances for Viz right before the show today. I launched one Zoom room, one NDI bridge machine. There was a G4DN 2X, a 4X, and then a 4X for Vector. So I launched 3, no problem. I recommend having a backup in Google Cloud, so that's what I did. In fact, when I went to get my Google Cloud GPU instances, they wanted to talk to me on the phone because they wanted to know if I was mining Bitcoin, because they were afraid of something like this. So they were limiting the amount of GPU instances that they would allow you to use for any kind of production. In AWS, it's a little easier, but I have GPU instances in every major data center on this continent and a couple others, just in case. You never know when you're going to need one in Asia or Africa.
According to Reddit, as of 6 months ago, $78,000 per Bitcoin on AWS, all in. So at $87,000, you have the opportunity to make $9,000 per Bitcoin, depending on how long it takes to do it. So that that means
you've got to bankroll it though, right?
Yeah, you have to bankroll it, but yeah. I mean, this is this is big boy game, but there's big boy games, and so that's what we used to call it, So, but there's a lot of people who own a lot of Bitcoin that can bankroll it, like they already, they have millions of dollars of Bitcoin already, and if they know that they can make $10,000 of Bitcoin, they might turn a bunch of things on to do that, and then I guess that again goes back to saturating the AWS market, so we can't get them for real work, and that's not good for AWS. I don't think this is a business that AWS wants, because it's not sustainable, because it'll go down but they've killed. Everyone's found another way to, causes demand destruction.
Well, yeah, the power consumption alone would have to be getting close to the cost. And you would assume that the cost you're paying.
Oh, they're making money
hour,
on it. It's just
but not the issue. I don't know.
No, AWS is making money on it, but the problem is that if you kill off a vibrant, dynamic market for something that's only going to last for X amount of time, it's a really bad thing for them to have a whole bunch of people that are upset because, do you build into it or whatever? They're definitely making money at it. I'm sure they're making good money on it, but the problem, they're really good at math. The one thing AWS is good at is math. All the weird things they do. I had a discussion with someone at AWS, and all the weird things that AWS does that on you can't use this many inputs, or you can't do this, and you can't set this up, and you have to wait for this. That's all because sometimes they're rolling it out slowly just to watch what happens and watch what it costs them to execute that. And all those limits are limits that protect them from losing money when you use it. So I'm sure that they're doing fine, but the problem is that it's destroying the markets that depend on them, that are much bigger markets over a long period of time than supporting. But I know one person. I have a friend that I'm sure is very happy about the price. He found how you find money under your pillow. He found 19 Bitcoins in a computer that had been sitting in his parents' house for a decade. bought a house with it.
Wasn't
you're like, I wonder if I can turn that computer on. And he said, I think there might be a Bitcoin or two there. There might be a Bitcoin or two there, like in that computer. He was like, I don't even know if I can remember the password. I mean, it'd been sitting literally at his parents' house, and parents' house had flooded and everything else, and he just got the computer. It turns on. Let's see what the password is. Oh, it turns on. How many Bitcoins do I have in my wallet? 19. And it was when Bitcoin was at like 60,000 or something like that. So he sold some and bought a house.
Did okay. Because didn't Leo have a wallet that he still can't get into, and he's got how many? Or is there only one that he's got in there, or something? One Bitcoin? Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I remember reading an article when Bitcoin was not like $16,000. Some guy had $250 million on a computer that went to the dump. He's still a good story. Still trying to find it.
He can't let the dump won't let him go dig for it. He knows right where to dig. They won't let him dig. You know, Alex, somebody we know, I'll tell you off the air, bought Yahoo when he was in high school and forgot about it. And it split and split and split and split. And eventually when he thought, oh yeah, I think I own some of that, he had $10 million worth of Yahoo stock. Somebody we know.
What would you,
and then he held on to it. Now it's not worth anything in it.
Yeah, that's right. No, but wouldn't you be like mixed? It would be mixed feelings, wouldn't it? It would be like, I was rich and I didn't know it, and I've been working so hard and I didn't need to be. For how long?
Right.
How long has this been worth so much?
What makes me feel better?
No, but if you knew about it, he probably would have sold it at like 500,000.
Oh, 100%. Like I look at it like, when Bitcoin was at like 20 cents, 25 cents. It went through my head, I should get a computer and start mining these. And it was right about the same time we got hit with so much production, and I just couldn't look down to like put together the PC. And I look back and I was like, wow, that was expensive. Because I was like researching how to mine it, because I've been studying cryptocurrencies for a decade. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It wasn't even like I was going to make money at it. I was just interested in it. And I was like, oh, I'll just get a mining thing and just let it run in the house. And I had an office, so I was like, I wouldn't directly pay for it. I just have this computer sitting there running on it. And I look back like, oh, that was expensive. But the reality is, it's not hundreds of millions of dollars that I lost, because I would have bought things with it. like I'm not that good. Like I'm not that disciplined. I would have been like, oh, let's buy a new switcher that now like the 10 years later cost me $1 billion, like that kind of. There was some guy that had a pizza that I think it was like 270 million when the dust settled, that or 220 million or something like that he calculated, because it was, it's 12 Bitcoins or something back in the day.
I was just looking if you can mine Bitcoin on Mac Silicon. Because you think about
it's not efficient.
Yeah, the power consumption you would think is very low.
Oh, and,
you think, right? So that's you get a whole bunch of the new Mac Minis and see how it goes. It would be interesting. ChatGPT is just telling me about it. It's like you can do it. It's that there are some significant factors to consider. The compatibility of the software.
I went down, like, ChatGPT is so much fun. Today there were 2 turkeys, well, 3 turkeys technically, and I don't mean turkeys like dorky people. I mean like turkeys that were outside my house fighting. I've never seen turkeys fight before, and it wasn't like they were annoyed. They were wrapping their necks around each other and literally just grabbing onto the other one's head, and like they're just wrestling. And I shot video. I'll post it. I was going to post it on Twitter, of course, or X or whatever it is. But they're all wrapped up and they're fighting, and there's blood and there's all this stuff going on there. Really, and I had never seen turkeys fight. And of course, and then I had to drive to FedEx. And while I'm driving, I'm asking ChatGPT. I was like, so do turkeys ever fight? Oh, yeah, they fight. And there's a pecking order and there's a thing. And I was like, and what happens when the turkeys are, like, the male turkeys aren't in the group? Well, they get kicked out because, they cause too much trouble, essentially. Like they, and it explains, like, if they challenge the lead male turkey, and they get too many times. I just thought this was such a parallel to human. If they don't know where they belong in the pecking order, literally, if they challenge the male too many times and lose, they get kicked out. Like, you can't even be with us. Like, you guys are off on your own. And then they form their own little pack. and then they fight among each other because there still has to be a pecking order, even though there's no females. Like anyway, I learned all these things from ChatGPT after seeing a random occurrence outside my house. It's an incredible. If you're not using ChatGPT or something like it, it's not the knowledge; it's just the fun.
I just said, how long would it take to mine one Bitcoin? It said, with a consumer computer, e.g. Mac or PC, estimation, thousands of years. Likely unachievable. Yeah, I think thousands of years is likely unachievable.
Just in case you thought I was making the last story up, there it is. There's two of them fighting. That is not a friendly embrace. That's them like at it. It was incredible. It was a crazy moment.
Do you know what it was about? It was about the election. They were from different places.
I can't believe you voted. We're getting really close to the third rail there. So
I know. I just put my foot on it. All right. Content recommendations. Adrian, what have you got?
Well, speaking of the third rail, with the coverage that we've had of the US elections, I have started reading What's Next, which is a book on the West Wing, which is, from my opinion, one of the best dramas ever put out. And so far, it's a really good read. So not quite digital, but it's on a Kindle. So
could be. Yeah, that's right. It passes. Yeah. Well done. Yeah. Guy, have you got one?
Yeah, a new white paper came out, an NDI white paper that's it says that it's for the TriCaster. It's called NDI Best Practices with TriCaster, but it is chock full of great information for all you geeks out there that want to learn about the protocol, LAN configuration, but it's got a lot of new cloud configuration stuff in here, stuff that I did not know. So I would say to download this. I will put a link in the chat for the new white paper that is outstanding.
Very cool. Alex?
I'm always looking for new series to watch, my wife told me that this was a really great series and I wouldn't watch it. I was like, oh, I saw the open. I felt like the production quality wasn't very high. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a bad, like low quality thing that'll bother me and I won't want to watch it. So I just literally only saw the trailer, the open, and made a decision. Let's talk about judging a book by its cover. Finally sat down and watched one of it, and then watched all of them in a week. Like I watched the whole two seasons in a week. It's called The Devil's Hour. It's a BBC production, and it's good stuff. Like it's well written. I think the BBC. I think that the Brits do better dialogue. Like they just do really good dialogue. It's really, there's something about it. Like I really enjoy. I very much enjoyed. Slow Horses, and I had to explain it to my dad. I finally found a way to explain it to I was like, you need to watch Slow Horses, you'll really enjoy this. And he's like, I don't understand. And I said, it's MI5, and he goes, well, I said, it's Rumpole of the Bailey in MI5. And then he was like, oh, I'll watch that. So if you've never seen Rumpole of the Bailey, it's like from the 80s, early 80s, like it's BBC. It showed up on Masterpiece Theater and PBS or whatever, and it was like this roly-poly lawyer that's always kind of dumpy but figures things out, and I think they literally watched that show and then made Slow Horses. so anyway, so that's those two.
What's this one called? Devil's what?
See how I snuck two in?
Yeah, nice.
So
what
good.
Was the first one?
So anyway,
The Devil's Hour. Devil's Hour.
I don't even know what service it's on. You'll have to search. I can't keep track of the services. Like I just know someone finds it, or I go to each service until I find in the recent what I watched.
Go to IMDb. Search on IMDb. It'll tell you where it streams.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon original.
There's your digital tip.
It's Prime. It's Amazon Prime. I will say that I think that I'm now finding that I watch the most number of things from Apple TV or Apple Plus or TV Plus or whatever, and Amazon Prime. Like it's interesting that I found that I'm actually considering getting rid of the other ones because I watch them so little.
Did you pay the extra for Amazon to go ad free?
I did, and I'm still bitter about it, but I did. It's $3 more, so you don't have to. Because when they turned it on, it was like, what happened to this show? Like, I was so upset, and then I was mad, and then I just went back to buying things from Amazon. paying $3 a month for it. Like it was kind of like I was like, I'm never done. And I was like, but it's $3 a month, and I get a lot of I get a lot of value out of Amazon Prime. Like we'll just say, like I got boxes showing up every day. So
fair enough. Chris, do you have a content recommendation?
Oh, I do. This is amazingly stupid, but it's why I love YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Matt Bangs Wood, and Matt Bangs Wood. He's a professional framing carpenter, and he just puts a GoPro on his head, and he walks around the job site and he builds walls, and he talks with the guys. Every once in a while, he'll talk to the camera, but mostly you're just along for the ride while he builds houses. And I will tell you, it is sublime. It's so relaxing to watch. It's so satisfying to watch a pile of wood turn into a building. I love it.
Subscribe.
Stupid, but
I
yeah,
can't wait.
subscribe.
I'm already subscribed.
So for mine, I finally caught up and saw Submerged on the Apple Vision Pro.
How'd you feel about it?
Very much enjoyed it. Yeah, it was great. I mean, there's that push in moment that happens.
Yeah,
that was like a physical response. You know, it was like,
I think that's the most amazing because it's definitely something that I would not do. Like I was like, oh no, you don't move the camera.
Don't do that.
And they created a physical reaction with a camera move for almost everybody that watched it. And some people it was too much. They didn't like it. I thought it was perfect. Like I just thought, and it was like 3 shots together, and I just thought it was just perfectly executed. The missile going through my body wasn't as perfect for me.
Yeah, agree with that. Yeah,
like that wasn't. The Weekend is coming out on Thursday, so the Weekend concert. That's the next. Apple's just slowly doling these out now. Yeah.
The other thing I've done on the Apple Vision Pro is the ultra wide virtual screen, which is very nice. So
it's equivalent of like 6,000 something or other, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So I was sitting in the car and in the middle seat, in the back seat. That's right. I was driving. And
you
Final
make
Cut
sure
looked amazing.
You set it up high enough so that you can still see the road.
It was fine. Everyone was safe. And so it's kind of wide enough that it just is, it's just huge. And running it on a MacBook Air, it is amazing. So a MacBook Air sitting on my lap and Vision Pro wherever I am. Now ultra wide has really made that like it's basically like 3 4K screens next to each other.
So it's how many pixels is it? Did you say 6,000?
I think I think it was 6,700 or something, the equivalent of it.
Something like that, yeah.
So how does that work? Currently, I'm cutting a piece that is 8,400 pixels by 1080 in my Final Cut. Can I pipe that into that thing? Those goggles?
You have to try it. You have to try it.
Nah, it's not gonna happen. You're gonna have to do this research.
Do you know what?
Me, Alex. That's why you're here.
Okay, we'll work on it.
Do you know what?
Send me the project. Send me like a project with 1 frame, and I'll tell you.
Now is a good time. I'm pretty sure that we're in the holiday season for Apple. You can buy things from Apple now and return them in January.
Nice.
You just change of mind. Exactly. I did that when the iPad Pro came out, the 12-inch. I wasn't quite sure, and I went and bought it. I used it for a month, and took it back, and I felt like it was just a bit too big, and now I have one. but anyway,
look, that's what happened.
It worked.
It's in your
Call
blood.
it the puppy approach. It's like, here, take this little puppy, and then you keep the puppy.
Of course, you are particularly nervous about scratching it or dropping it or something during that time. But
I just have to tell you the funniest dog story. I know I'm just going to tell you this because it's completely non sequitur, except for you just talked about the puppy. We went to the craziest thing. We went to a funeral and a wedding. No, I'm sorry, funeral and a birthday in Tucson. So one uncle, we were having his memorial, and then the other uncle, we were having a birthday party. They're brothers, but we were all down there, and there was a dog, and not a puppy, like a dog, and my cousins liked the dog, and someone said, "Well, do you want it?" And they were like, "Yes," and the next thing you know, they flew home with it. With the dog, with the perfect, like, the dog was the nicest dog, and it was like
so the equivalent.
I was like,
Chris,
that is the craziest thing. I was like, my family is insane. Like, it was just like this, like the idea that you would just someone would just offer you a dog, and then you just take it and then fly home with it before anyone really thought through that.
Chris, you're going to do a demo of the Apple Vision Pro, and then you're just going to take it home. That's what's going to happen.
Yep. You're going to edit on it, and you're going to realize that you don't need nearly as much space to edit.
The same day you guys all bought your goggles, I bought that same amount in Apple stock, and I made $600 off it.
There you go. But I got $600 of happiness.
Fun. Me too.
Yeah. I have to say that flying with an Apple Vision Pro is just otherworldly. It's so great. Changing. Just don't sit in the aisle. Like, I just flew home 2 days ago from New York, and I was like, oh, the aisle will be fine. Like, I haven't sat in the aisle since I got the Vision Pro. And, the person next to me, of course, had to stand up, like, I don't know, 8 times during the show. And then you're like, oh, take the thing off.
It's not just that. It's where you put your windows. So you're like looking at the person next to you, or you're looking at the person across the aisle, or they keep looking at you. Yeah,
I like it because I can keep track of where the flight attendants are with the food, so that and the drinks. And so what happens is, if you're on the aisle, you take the screen and you kind of move it up, and then every once in a while you turn down the turn down the opacity, and then you turn it back up again, and you can kind of see it. What's funny is that no one gives you a second look, or maybe they do, and then you just don't see it.
Oh, they're totally giving you a second look. You're just oblivious because you got your head in those goggles. Believe me, Alex, you're like this close to getting beat up. This is like junior high action.
Yeah, this is so funny though.
I'm
always like, no one says anything.
I did have a grumpy flight attendant, an old dude, who came up and he was like, "Oh, can you see me through that?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "Oh, well, it's a safety issue. I'm like, "What's the difference between me wearing an eye mask,
right,
and this? I can't see through the eye mask. Don't care about people doing that."
Yeah.
Anyway, on that happy note, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Taylor. Now, Taylor had a couple of notes that I think are very important. We're looking for some people to do question managing on this show. And so if you have a bit of time, then you can contact Taylor and he'll be able to hook you in. And there's also room for some more TDs for people that want to switch this show. And in fact, we've had some assistance in getting some of the dashboards worked out, where it's literally just opening up and clicking buttons, and you're not actually having to go into the full interface as much as you can, and you can see all of that. There's also kind of some dashboard buttons now for doing whatever it is that you want to do. And I believe we're also building out some heavier integration back into Makana as well. So raised hands, building out MEs and things like that. It's very exciting. So it seems like the 4K thing has hung in there, Guy. I think I haven't noticed that our sends have dropped
everything
off
ran
at all,
pretty smooth. Yeah, the other thing is with NDI Bridge, you can pull down a multi-viewer too in 4K, so you can have a 4K multi-viewer of everything. That's where it really comes in handy, things like that for production. Cool. Depending on what the egress charges are, I wonder how much that would be for an hour-long show at the lower bitrate setting. So something to think about.
It'll probably be double because it's been a 2-hour show, as it turns out. Anyway, thank you each to the panelists. Chris, I give you a hard time, but I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your perspective, and even Adrian getting up in the middle of the day. Well done. Getting up at lunchtime to make it happen.
Was it that obvious?
Thanks, Guy, for always pushing the edge as well and trying out these new things and making 4K happen. We'll see where it goes, and maybe we'll get all the panelists doing it soon. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.